Virtual Campground is a community of RVers. We gather around the campfire to share stories, information, and travel tips that help you on your next adventure. Your camp hosts, Deborah and Barry Benton, are full-time RVers in search of quaint bookstores, cozy coffee shops with great Wi-Fi, and epic photography opportunities, all to share with you. So pull up your chair and join us in the Virtual Campground. Welcome to the Virtual Campground. We are so glad you are here.
We are.
And what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about Savannah.
Savannah,
Georgia.
We love Savannah. You sounded very Southern right
Thank
there.
Thank you. I was practicing my draw.
We love Savannah, Georgia, and it is a fantastic place to visit. And if you haven't been there, you must put it on your list.
Absolutely. Top of your list.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful town. So let's talk about a number of things. We've got a lot to cover.
Yes.
But let's talk about why we went there. First off, we knew it was beautiful, so we wanted to go.
It's been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, heard so many things about it. Mm-hmm. But specifically, we wanted to do a photography workshop for Benton Downs.
Benton Downs was doing a photography workshop, so we went to scout it, and then we went for the workshop.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of beautiful things to photograph.
That's right. Yeah. So we spent a long time exploring it, making lots of notes, scouting it, as they say in the biz, and then we brought in a group of people for a photography workshop and had a great time.
Yeah. I just call it exploring, but you call it scouting.
Scouting. You can charge money when you're scouting.
Oh, okay. Well, I just explored it.
So, what were your first impressions of the city?
That it's beautiful. You get to Savannah, and I think your first impression is it's a beautiful place.
It's a beautiful place, and it's so well preserved.
They've clearly take a lot of pride in it.
Yeah,
there is so much history there, and they've done such a great job of preserving and even adding to it. So a lot of times you'll go to a city and it's well preserved, historical, so it's just a lot of old buildings. But they've really done a good job of not only renovating the buildings and preserving them, but then giving them new use too.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting to walk around and see. Buildings that used to be a post office that are now, say, part of the college or bookshops or whatever. So that was exciting to see and explore. Not to mention, we're going to talk about, of course, the squares, because everybody talks about the squares of Savannah. But it really is, and it's also a town. Well, it's known, as the hostess city.
Oh, yes.
Did you not know
I'd
that?
heard that.
Yes. And the people are so friendly and so hospitable.
Right.
And the town itself feels hospitable. It has that small town feel, but yet, it's a pretty big city.
Yeah, it's sizable, and the really touristy part. The interesting thing about the historic district that is, the reason that many people go to Savannah, doesn't feel over touristy to me. It's well preserved and beautiful and lush, and it's just really, really well done.
So, who do you think should go to Savannah? Besides just everybody.
Well, yeah. It's hard to narrow it down because it is, first off, it's a walking city. It's just a beautiful city to photograph and to see beautiful, lush landscapes and beautiful old homes.
Yep.
So if you love old architecture and gardening, history, you're going to love Savannah.
And if you love food, it's also a huge foodie.
Some great restaurants in town, and we partook of some of those. We scouted some of those.
Very few are not good.
It was really lovely.
Yes, absolutely. So when is the best time to go to Savannah?
Anytime.
Anytime. Go all the time.
Well, there are some caveats. If you can pick and choose your time, you might want to avoid summer.
I would suggest you absolutely avoid summer, but then I don't like to be hot. But seriously, I would avoid July and August, because we did hear from shop owners that basically said they treat it like other beach cities might treat winter. A lot of them, I think, close their shops, and that they say it's just pretty empty in July and August because it is a little hot and humid.
It's a hot and humid location,
which is great for the greenery, but terrible for people. So most people escape to the beaches.
Yeah.
So I would avoid July and August if you can. But that said, that also means I think they have a fairly mild winter. But the best time to go is probably spring.
Yes.
And spring in Savannah comes early.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, you really have to time it. If you want to go see the azaleas, you have to be there, when they're blooming, and they bloom a little quicker than we were used to.
Yeah, because we got there end of March thinking we were going to get to see all the azaleas in bloom, and found out they were pretty much gone. Mm-hmm. And we were told, early March for Savannah, and so that's when you really want to see those flowers. That said, there's still a lot of beautiful flowers. Later, when we were there in the March, April, we were there pretty much from late March into April. So we saw quite a few beautiful flowers. The other caveat on timing would be, and this is really a personal preference, is St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's
St.
right.
Patrick's Day is huge in Savannah. Now, this shocked me personally, like that Savannah would be one of the largest St. Patrick's Day parades in the States.
Yeah, because this group, we saw big groups walking through, and we were there
After.
Oh, that's
After
right. Yeah,
St. Patrick's
a good
Day.
ways after. So,
But apparently it starts being very green early on.
So yeah, definitely plan your trip around that if you're going to
Whether
be
you
around
want to
St.
be there
Patrick's
or
Day.
not want to be
Right,
there
exactly.
is really it's apparently very crowded. There was a very large Irish settlement that came to Savannah years after it started, and so those folks apparently brought St. Patrick's Day with them. And so you can decide whether or not you want to be there for that. I think it'd be interesting, but only if I wasn't having to be in the middle of all the crowds.
Yeah. It looked crazy. It looked like it had been a crazy event, and but even if you don't catch the flowers, there's still so much lushness in the town.
Green.
You've got all that greenery everywhere, the Spanish moss. It's just really a beautiful place to be.
The other time I think would be really interesting to be there is Halloween.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that would have to be crazy.
So the other thing about Savannah is there's a lot of ghosts. Now, a place that has this much history probably is going to have a lot of ghosts, but they really believe in their ghosts. I mean, if you get into a conversation with some locals, almost always ghosts are going to come up, and they're going to talk about it. There are specifically tours and buses that you can go on to take you around all the haunted spots. So it is absolutely probably a great place to be at in October
Probably
for
so.
Halloween.
Yeah. That combined with the it's sort of famous for the Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Yes.
That book, and that's so a lot of fun stuff going on there. Halloween, I bet.
Lots of history. So history tends to come up with ghosts. But so there is a lot of history. Did you know that Savannah is the oldest city in Georgia?
I did not know that. I did not know
It is. It was founded in 1732 by General James Oglethorpe.
I did know that.
You can't help but know that after spending about an hour in Savannah, because Mr. Oglethorpe, General Oglethorpe, is everywhere. Not only in statues, but the main street is named Oglethorpe. It has a very long history, and he is the one that started. He came over with about 120 passengers, and they settled there on this bluff. They named the state Georgia after King George, and then they created Savannah, the city. And in doing so, they settled it. The purpose of it was, did you know this? That he settled there with these people because they were trying to create a buffer zone because the Spanish were encroaching. They were coming up from Florida, and they were trying to create a buffer for all of the rest of Britain's land. I know. Look at me. I know these things.
Dropping knowledge.
The funny I guess, sort of, but they when they first settled the colony or the city of Savannah, they did not allow any slavery. They did not allow any alcohol. Lawyers and Roman Catholics.
Lawyers and Catholics.
You can't have all those. Now, there was a practical reason for the Roman Catholics. That was because they assumed they would align with the Spanish, because Spanish tends to be Catholic as opposed to the British. So that was one of the reasons why they said no to the Roman Catholics. Personally, being a Roman Catholic, if you don't allow alcohol, the Roman Catholics aren't going to come there anyway. So I don't really understand what's the big deal. But they did turn that around pretty quickly, as we'll learn later. But Oglethorpe was really progressive for a person in the 1700s. He made friends with the local Native Americans that were living there. It was a Yamacraw Indian chief, and I'm going to probably not say this right, but his name was Tomochichi.
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 Yep.
And
I'm pretty sure you got it right.
You
I
think?
you nailed
I
it.
nailed it. Good. They pledged to be mutually nice to one another, and as a result, Tomochichi actually ended up being buried in Savannah when he died, as opposed to with his people. He is in the square, I believe, with
I think it's
General Oglethorpe.
Yeah, I think it was. I didn't get a photo of his burial, place, but I think it was in that same square.
Yep, that same square, and there's a large rock there, and in that rock they say, again, haunted. Remember that if you go talk to it, it whispers.
Yeah, I saw some people walk up to it and put their ear to it, and
You're supposed to
they
be able to
walked
hear
away
whispering.
looking very skeptical.
Yeah.
But,
You didn't put your ear on it?
No, I didn't. I didn't try.
Okay, well, you should try it. Anyway, but Savannah has seen a lot of history just because they are in a pretty strategic place, being right there near the water.
Yep.
So they had, of course, the American Revolution was fought quite a bit there. The War of 1812 had some fighting there. And, of course, the Civil War was in their neighborhood. They say that there was no battle actually in Savannah, but there was one pretty darn close. And actually Fort Pulaski, which is out by Tybee Island, was where General Lee got his commission of being in charge. Yeah.
Very cool.
So, but the interesting thing at the Civil War was when General Sherman made that infamous march through the South to the sea, he came
destroying
upon
everything in its way.
Everything,
right?
Poor Atlanta, right? Upon coming to Savannah, he was so captivated by its beauty that he decided not to burn it, and in fact sent a telegram to President Lincoln saying, "Merry Christmas," and giving him Savannah as a Christmas gift.
Wasn't that nice?
That's nice. Well, nice for the
very
Savannahans.
fortunate
That was nice, I guess.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing about Savannah is, and again, going back to General Oglethorpe, he basically sat down with a pen and paper and a ruler and laid out the city to be a grid. It is absolutely the most. Yeah, you cannot get lost.
No, you really can't.
You always know north is the river, and
yep.
It's easy because of the way the roads are. It's very well laid out.
Very easy to understand once you get the lay of the land, so to speak, and 24 squares, of which 22 are in existence still.
That's right, yes. He planned 24 and 22 still exist. The also interesting thing is he was, again, very progressive. So he planned these squares to be where there would be retail and residents around every square, so people wouldn't have to go very far.
Yeah.
And so they would create these communities.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And it's fun. That's part of the whole experience, is just walking around all those different squares.
Oh, and it's so easy to get around.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, for just that very reason. Again, going back to these squares and the history and the preservation, almost every square, well, they're all named for somebody, right? But they almost all have a statue. They almost all have some sort of historical marker. So for visitors, that makes it really simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if let's see, I have a photo of
Madison Square.
Yeah.
So you can see here, there's a statue in Madison Square, and there is the historical marker. Nearly every one of them have that, so that you can really get around and see what they're trying to show you, what was important exactly.
In that area,
yeah.
Yep.
So fast forward. That cotton was king. A lot of sad history also in Savannah, of course, because they have a port. A lot of slaves came in through that port. That's one of the areas that's most haunted, is down there, where many families were torn apart. But when cotton was king, then they had the boll weevils came in, and so then
it took out all the cotton.
It took out the cotton, and then the Great Depression hit. But eventually Savannah started coming back, and a group of women got together in the 1950s, and this is why we all are in love with Savannah, really, because these women got together and said, we have to preserve this. And they fought and raised money and created the Historic Savannah Foundation to save a lot of these buildings. It's one of the largest historic districts to be designated a National Historic Landmark. They got that in 1966. And it's just one of the best things I think that ever happened to the city, and one of the reasons why, for us, the visitors, it makes it a really great place.
Yeah, and we've said this a number of times as we're going around the country, the foresight of some people to be able to say, we need to preserve this, and to have the political know-how and the strength to do it is incredible, and we're very grateful for that.
And we are very grateful to those people.
So, lots of interesting history in Savannah. It's a pretty amazing place from that perspective.
Yes.
Of course, that leads to the architecture, a discussion about the architecture. There are so many interesting things from an architecture perspective, and from a photographer perspective.
Always one of
one of my favorite places is just Jones Street. It's one of the prettier streets in the city. It's well known for just all the lush greenery.
It's actually been called the prettiest street in America.
Is that what it's called?
It
I
has
wonder
been.
who called it that. And so
Somebody in Savannah.
Yeah, so it's fun to walk down, and there are lots of little things to photograph as well as just the street itself. So that's a really cool place.
And the interesting thing is so Jones Street, or really any of the, as you're walking around and looking at the buildings and the houses, they might have historical markers on them too. They'll have the year that it was built, often 1890, whatever, and so you can really see which buildings have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
You'll see all kinds of architecture: Federal, Victorian, Italian. Those are just names I know. I'm going to have to learn more about architecture if we're going to as we're going around all these places. All right, so right down from Lafayette Square, literally like they're parallel to each other, is Madison Square. And Madison Square has this beautiful statue that honors William Jasper. He was a Revolutionary War hero. And it has beautiful plants and trees as well.
Very lush.
Very lush. But it's also got a lot of things going on in that square. So some of my favorite things in the city, actually, is probably one of my favorite squares from just the perspective of it got me in the middle of everything. So first one was my favorite place in the city, which I think you know what that is. Yes, that's right.
Good old bookstore. But this was a really cool bookstore.
Really cool
Lots
bookstore.
of character.
Lots of character. It was built in 1842, and it's actually a really interesting origin history as well. It was built as a home for a woman builder.
Yeah.
So unusual for the 1840s,
Very
but there was
strange,
a
yeah.
woman that built homes. She was, I don't know if she was an architect so much as maybe like the person that really helped build the homes. But she had this home, and then it became an antique store for a while. And then in the 1970s, a couple bought it. They actually came to Savannah, fell in love, and moved there. Fell in love with the city. They were already married and in love with each other. And started East Shaver, their last name being, of course, Shaver. It now is owned by a woman that worked for them. Yep. She bought them for them. But this is a great bookstore. You can find everything here. In fact, this is where we bought the guidebook that we used as we were touring around the city, and it was a great square by square walking tour.
Yeah.
It was called actually the Savannah Walking Tour and Guidebook.
Yep.
Highly recommend it. It's a thin book. It was really more like a magazine, so really easy to carry around with you, and had lots of interesting facts in it, and kind of helped you walk your way through the city.
Yeah, that was really our Bible for getting around.
It really was. And so that great place, we actually came upon an author doing a reading, so definitely check their events calendar and see what they have going on. And
I thought it was cool that they had a typewriter there with all these notes.
People
and
left notes.
People would type up a note and pin it to the wall, and some of them were quite poignant, some of them were just funny, but it was,
a little bit of poetry. Of course, for many people that are visiting, they probably have never seen a typewriter.
That's right.
Because they're too young. Also, the other thing that was really fun about this bookstore is they had a tea room.
Yeah, and this is just one section of one row. They had lots of different teas, and they were very knowledgeable. They, you ask questions, and they would they knew their tea very well.
Yeah, so if you told them what you like, they could absolutely point you in the right direction, sweetened or unsweetened, iced or hot. They also had a lot of tea accoutrements.
Yes.
So you could buy
Fun things to
lots
buy.
of things from them, including the tea. So East Shaver and the Savannah Tea Room great places to stop and buy some good souvenirs.
Highly recommend.
And so that's a great spot. And it's also really convenient because Madison Square, you're probably going to end up going by it a couple of times as you're touring around. So it's great to stop in there and quench your thirst.
That's right.
But yeah, so other things in Madison. Madison Square also was the home of the, hard to say, sorrel weed, right? Weed. I have a hard time with that. Sorrel Weed House.
I'm going to have to take your word for that.
Yeah, that doesn't just trip off the tongue. But they're one of the places you can go to and get a really cool haunted tour of the rooms. And supposedly there are ghosts there. The other thing is we finally figured out, visiting at Madison Square, what SCAD was.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Everywhere we went in the town, we kept seeing buildings that said SCAD on it. And the two of us were like, what is going on? So, of course, that is the Savannah College of Art and Design.
That's right. And it had a really cool gift shop, so recommend you stop in there. Some
art by the students.
Yeah, art by the students and the professors.
Yes.
Really cool place.
So there are a lot of buildings you'll see that have something to do with the college as you go around town, but this shop is right off of Madison Square that you can actually go in and visit it.
Yeah.
And then across the street from that is the Griffin Tea Room, which was another lovely spot to stop for a bite and tea.
Yeah.
If you were so inclined.
That's a little more high end.
Yeah, a little more like afternoon tea. You could do that
Schaefer.
there, and very tasty little things.
Yeah.
But one thing we were looking for, sort of, but couldn't find in the squares, and you will not find, is Forrest Gump's bench.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So many people go there because it was in Forrest Gump's movie.
Because it was filmed there.
Yeah,
yes.
It was filmed there.
The bench scene where he has the box of chocolates was filmed there in Savannah in this particular square, but the bench is no longer there. There's a sign telling you that the bench is no longer there. It's actually in the museum over on Main Street.
Yep.
Not called Main Street, but their Main Street. So at any rate, but you can see the bench if you would like and go in there, but it is not in the square.
Nope.
But we did see Forrest Gump.
Yeah, we saw they have impersonators. I don't know how many, but yeah, you can actually take a tour. So we saw the trolley go by. The trolley stopped. Forrest Gump ran after it, jumped in there, and did a little routine with the tourists. So that was fun.
Yeah, they have, I think they have a General Oglethorpe from time to time. So those are those sort of red trolleys. Yeah. And so there's a couple of them you could do. There's some that are haunted, and there's some that are just tourists that go around and take you around. So if you're not into walking, it's a great option. We preferred not to get on the trolley. We just decided to do the walking to ourselves, like we said, with our book. We also used an app that we had found called...
It's called GPS My City.
That's right.
So yeah, that came in handy.
Because then I was just listening, and it would tell me some facts as we were walking by things that I would then share.
So it's GPS My City.
Yeah, it was a little more simple for us and cost less than the trolley, but and we didn't have to wait for trolleys.
Right, and it wasn't so much about the trolleys are great. If you have a short period of time and you want to get to all the hot spots really quickly. I mean, we were there for a couple of weeks, so we had the luxury of being able to explore the city slowly. So we chose to walk, but the trolley's a great way to go.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if you're not a person that likes to walk as much.
That's right.
Because I put on, I think, 15,000 steps most of the time. Yeah, it was a lot of walking. All right, so we've talked about the squares.
Yes.
Let's talk about really the two top things that you think to go see in Savannah, besides just walking around and seeing everything.
Well, the most famous park kind of square thing is Forsyth Park.
Right.
And it's the largest park there in the middle of that historic area.
Kind of at the edge of the historic area.
Yeah, it is on
about
southern
30
edge.
acres.
Yeah.
About 30 acres was, I think, started in the 1840s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about 30 acres that were, I believe, donated to the city at some point.
Right, and you can see the photo behind us. It is
it's always there.
It is Forsyth Park. It is it's the photo you see all the time.
All the time.
So I have photographed.
That's why photographers go.
That's right. So so it's a beautiful park to photograph.
Yep.
Besides the fountain, there are lots of little details of it and what have you. So everyone goes to grab that main shot. And if you are a photographer and you want to get this shot without people in it, that's the challenge. So I got up before sunrise, got to this location, and did these shots before people started arriving.
Yeah.
And then as you walk around, you can see different areas that are fun to photograph. Lots of benches around there.
But these were all taking really early in the morning because
really
it
early,
gets
yeah.
busy. And, of course, that's late at night.
Yeah.
But because it does get very busy. In fact, we were there at one point. There was a wedding.
Yep.
The policeman told us he hated it, but because they have to do all this sectioning off, But it was a beautiful wedding with the fountain right in their background. It'd be awesome, But there is a lot more to Forsyth Park than just the fountain. This is actually sort of the entrance to it as you're coming in from the city. Beyond it is a lot more green space. There's a big amphitheater. There's also
a children's play area that looked really cool,
and a scent garden for those that are visually impaired. Big area for dogs. The dogs roam pretty freely, as I remember it. They were able to get around pretty easily.
And it's surrounded by beautiful homes.
Yes, of course.
Some of the most gorgeous homes in the city.
A lot of which are bed and breakfasts.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful place. Just you could spend an afternoon just walking around there.
Absolutely.
So really nice. And this is we stumbled across this farmers market, I guess.
Saturday morning.
Yeah. So really fun. Lots of people and cool stuff.
Food and crafts.
Yeah. So
Forsyth
Park. Highly
Forsyth
recommend.
Park is a great place to go, especially if you have kids, and let them just run because you can see them for a long while. Grab a picnic, head out there, and just enjoy a good, nice afternoon. Beautiful area. Find a tree if it's a little toasty, but yeah, you can walk up there. It's a great place also to start if you wanted to. The parking in the Savannah area, of course, is a little iffy. There's some parking garages. You can park at the Convention Visitors Bureau. There is a lot of parallel parking around the park, Forsyth Park,
parking,
and we were able to find some like 1 block away.
Yeah.
So you can do that as well. And start there and start your walking tour or start it at the river, either way.
Yeah.
Yep, but this is sort of, you're probably for the most part, especially walking tour, you're going to go from river to Forsyth Park. You're not going to go much past Forsyth Park. And then within probably on either side of Forsyth Park, within just a couple of blocks is pretty much the walking area of Savannah.
Yeah, it's pretty compact. And that book you mentioned earlier will describe all that, and it's a fairly easy walking city.
Oh, very easily walking city. Yep. So the other huge attraction, well, for us and I think most people, is St. John the Baptist Cathedral, which is actually a basilica.
Yes, it is a beautiful church. And again, if you're there if you love architecture or you're a photographer, this is a must place to visit.
There were some tours, I believe, of the church as well. Actually, I would really highly recommend looking at their schedule. We ended up being there right around Easter, and there was an organ. There's a gorgeous organ there, and we were able to catch an organ recital, I guess you could call it, or a concert. Highly recommend if you can do that. It was really beautiful. But you want to go there, really take note of the ironwork around the front, and then also the confessionals. There's, of course, carved, I think, is the right word. Palmettos are on the doors of the confessional. So just really very, very pretty. It was kind of fun to see it. It's right actually in between two of my favorite squares, Lafayette and Madison. It's sort of in that road right in between. And it was a funny story because, of course, you heard us say earlier Catholics weren't allowed into Savannah. And then the Irish Catholics came, and Oglethorpe decided they could make this exception for these folks. And but the story was they called it St. John the Baptist in order to try to kind of trick the locals that it was Catholic church, but they were going to name it St. John the Baptist, so maybe it would go over better.
It'd be okay with that.
So kind of, I'm sure that's a myth, but kind of a fun little story. Also, it was a really cute little a restaurant right across the street from the church called Maribel's that had good tea and little baked goods. I think you could get a whole breakfast there too. So it was a great place to stop for a personal break and to get something to drink. So another good place to look at when you're in that area.
That's right.
Okay, so another really interesting area. So there's, of course, lots of historic things you can see, lots of historic buildings. Telfair Museum is one of the first art museums in the country, so that also is there in Savannah. But Savannah has the first African-American Baptist church in the country.
Wow.
The first black church in the country, and it was obviously very prominent. It was part of the Underground Railroad, and there you can actually see holes in the floorboards where they had punched them for people that were hiding to be able to breathe better. So so that's a cherished area to go visit and see more about that part of the history. There's also, of course, the historic district we've already talked about, that most of these buildings that we've talked about are in the historic district. And did you know that in this historic district, you can carry
No, that's right.
your cups, your alcoholic beverages.
Yeah.
So it is okay to walk around the historic district of Savannah with your red cup, your red solo cup.
Yeah, grab a drink and walk around.
Plenty of places will share with you. You can we'll hand you it off, and you can go, especially the area around the city market, which is down by Ellis Square, closer to the river. That's probably the most common area to be able to walk around.
Yeah. Now,
let's get outside the historic district a little bit.
So there are two spots that I recommend, especially from a photography perspective. I did not spend a whole lot of time at Wormsloe Arch, but there's an old ruined plantation there. But it's famous for the long road and the arches of trees going across it. So they do charge an admission. It's not all that much. There's not much left of the plantation or the ruins, but I've heard it's a fun place to go visit. But we did not make it on our 2 trips there.
No, but you stopped. You can also for free stop outside and try to catch that famous picture.
So the tip there is the guard shack, so to speak, is right up at the front. But if you tell them you're just with the photography club and you just want to, or you're just there as a tourist but don't have time to go in, they let us just park over there to the side, jump out, take a few shots, and leave without paying. So yeah. But the other place that we highly recommend is Bonaventure Cemetery. So it's the famous cemetery featured on the book I mentioned earlier, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and
which you should read before you go.
Yeah, you should read. It's great. This is where the famous statue that's on the cover of that book
little girl.
used to be in the cemetery. Now they had to move it once the movie got so famous, and people were coming to look at it and they were afraid of vandalism. But so they have moved it to a museum. But
probably in there with Forrest Gump's bench.
Maybe, yeah. But it is a stunningly beautiful cemetery, and
very atmospheric.
Yeah, very atmospheric. Tons of Spanish moss, beautiful sculptures. So it is a great place to visit, and I highly recommend. Now, because we were there on a photography tour, rearranged for after-hours access. You wouldn't necessarily be able to do that, although there's at least one vendor that I'm aware of that advertises after-hours access, so you might be able to arrange it. But if you can get there in the late afternoon when the sun is low in the horizon, or get there first thing when they open, that's the best time to be there if you want to photograph it. So get those nice long shadows, and it's just a beautiful place to visit. Because
depending on your time of year, I mean, when we were there, golden hour was actually after closing hours.
That's
I
right.
think so.
That's right.
Depending on your time of year, golden hour might be within the hours of the cemetery.
Yeah.
So, but golden hour being that hour before sunset. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Just as the sun's low on the horizon, you get those nice long shadows and the rich colors from the sun. So. Highly recommend that. I mean, most of the people are going to be showing up there in the middle of the day, and there are so many shadows there. It makes the photography of the artwork, the statues, the monuments, the sculptures more difficult. So, just keep that in mind if you want to visit. It's a beautiful place to visit, though, and we highly recommend it.
And it is highly visited. It's also the resting place of Johnny Mercer.
There are a lot of
a lot of famous
people
there. He who wrote, of course, Moon River, which is actually about the Savannah River. Okay. So he is buried there, a famous Savannan.
Yeah, and they have different parts of the park. You get a map, you make a little contribution to the Historical Society, and you get a map, and they do have a visitor center there, a small little house that has some information. And that'll show you where some of the more famous grave sites are.
Yep. And I'll give you a little information about some of the people that are buried there. A lot of pretty flowers as well.
Yeah.
So, great place to visit.
Neat place.
Okay.
Let's talk about food.
So, food in Savannah is like an art form.
It is. Beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
It was delicious. More than beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful too, but it was delicious. So our favorite place, we had brunch and dinner and drinks at this one place. So clearly it was our favorite. We went back there several times. Collins Quarter.
And we went back there and just got chais from their window. They had a little walk-up
window. Yeah. So we went there several times. It's great. It is good to make a reservation if you can, because it's very busy, especially at brunch. Very popular. Though, if you go there and there is a line and a wait, there's plenty of things around there to go see. The Tamachichi Rock is right down the street from it. There's a couple of stores, including a really kind of interesting store. We went in and bought a little souvenir stuff. It was just kind of a fun store with candles and local things. So absolutely, you can go there and do the wait, but it was very tasty.
Very tasty.
Very tasty. And this was very, very tasty. It was a drink we went, and now I don't remember what it was, but it was very tasty. We went back there one time for happy hour, and it was just sat at the bar and got to talking to the bartender, and it was very, very lovely. So we absolutely recommend Collins Quarter.
Mm-hmm. There was another little place we stopped by called the Public Kitchen and Bar, and that was nice.
The great thing about the Public was it was right on. I mean, you passed it. We passed it several times.
Yeah, it was very convenient.
So it was very convenient as you're walking the squares. So you're going to probably walk by it. It's off of Liberty, and Liberty's one of the, I guess that would be east-west streets, or north-south streets. So it's definitely one that you're going to pass. Yeah. And it was very good, very convenient. It had outdoor seating, as you can see. And it had very good shrimp and grits, as I remember, that you enjoyed. Then I also, one day, you were off, and I went to Giribaldi's, which is an Italian restaurant, not far from Ellis Square, kind of down where the city market is. That was really good, really cool. But you came and met me there. Yeah, I came and met you
at the bar, and we had a drink.
Old-fashioned looking,
really dark and romantic and fun. And
that was really tasty food. We also ate one time at the Old Pink House, which is very famous.
That's a very famous place. Highly recommended. That was really, really good.
And we did not make it to Mrs. Wilkes' dining room. Mrs. Wilkes' dining room is very, very famous there, but you have to get there. It's like only open, I think, at lunch or something, and you have to get there really early in the morning to get in line, to then get in, and everybody sits at like at community tables together, and that just we're not early morning people, so that didn't really make it for us. And then you guys ate
for the photography workshop. We went to the Paula Dean's.
I think it's called something and her sons.
Yeah, Paula Dean and Sons. Yeah, something like that. But it was really good. A little touristy.
Very fried.
A lot of fried Southern comfort food. It was good, but So I think if you're into that sort of really down-home fried Southern cooking, it's a place to go.
And there are certainly plenty of other places to get it as well. Mm-hmm. You can always just go back to Paula Dean's to go in her store, but and then go eat other places.
Yeah.
But
well, I was just going to say that we got there right when they opened. Paula Dean's is extremely popular and busy, so we got there right when they opened, and we walked right in. And then when we left, there was a line out the door. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Another big area to eat is down on River Road. Mm-hmm. We popped in at one place. I think we ate one of the places down there and didn't find it. We felt it was a little bit more touristy, and the food wasn't. So our recommendation is to stay up in the historic area to find a good place to eat, because you're going to find lots of places to eat. Doesn't mean that there aren't good restaurants down on the River Road. We just didn't seem to find one. But Other popular thing, with us is always chocolate.
Yep.
And there is a store there. There's actually two, right? They had two stores.
Pretty incredible chocolate shops.
It was almost, well, it was. You did some photography there because it was so pretty.
Right.
But this chocolate by Adam Torini, it was like the one store would look like a book, like a library, right?
Right.
And the other one was more like a fashion.
Shelves And
they had these shelves, and you pulled out the drawers. This one picture here on the right is actually a drawer you would carry around with you, and you'd use tongs and put the chocolates you wanted in this drawer, and then when you take it up, they wrap it up really pretty for you. But these were very artistic chocolates, but they were really good.
Yeah.
Very, very tasty. Very, very tasty. There's some other chocolate shops there too that are well known. There's a Lulu's and a couple others, but this was my favorite. It was beautiful. It was a neat experience. I think that's part of it. It's just a neat experience, and you could watch them.
Presentation. Yeah, it was different.
And you could also see them making it in the back, so that was really cool too. The other very famous place there in Savannah is Leopold's. We went there for ice cream. Yep. Again, another place that there's probably going to be a line when you go. Yeah, we
would walk by and there'd be long lines there. We got lucky and wasn't too bad of a line when
we got there one time. But there, it is worth it. It has been around for a very, very long time, and there's cool movie posters around because apparently the son or the man that owns Leopold's now is also a producer on Hollywood, so it's kind of funny, but very tasty. I think their big flavor, Tutti Frutti was invented there. I did not try Tutti Frutti, but I hear it's very good. But it's an institution in Savannah, so you just have to go.
Yeah. Plus it's ice cream.
So why not? Go any day, even on Sundays. And we also enjoyed going down to the River Street. We did walk around the River Street because you want to go down there. It's very historic, cobblestones, and again, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of history down there. There's this place down there called the River Street Sweets Candy Store. River Street Sweets. That's hard to say. Yeah. Candy store. Definitely go in there. They'll give you a free praline. And it was very tasty. Praline or praline. How do you say it?
Praline.
Praline. Praline.
I
say praline.
Yeah, well, it depends. Depends on what part of the country you're from.
Yes, exactly. But definitely is good to go in there. Another great place along the river is to go into the Savannah Bee, where not only can you do some tastes of different kinds of honeys and buy just about anything honey you want, you can also, they do taste there of mead. Remember that? Mead tastings. Yeah. We did not try mead, but they had.
No, it was a really cool honey shop.
Yes, it was. It's very large. So a great place to go as well down there on the River Street. The River Street, again, a lot of history there. Yeah. It's the port where everything comes in.
Do you remember this statue?
I do remember the statue. Do you remember it?
I remember vaguely. You can fill in the blanks, but she was a lady that lived on the riverbank, and she would and as the ships came by, she would wave at the sailors.
Yes, like every ship she would meet them with and wave. So she's called the Waving Lady, and so this statue is there in her honor.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
It is very nice.
Very cool.
So, so those are some of our favorite places to get food. Yeah. There are lots of other choices there in Savannah because, like we said earlier, it is absolutely a foodie kind of city.
Yeah, do your research. Like any popular destination like that, do your research.
Absolutely. And make reservations when you can. If you can, make some reservations. That is probably a great thing to do. So that was a lot of information about Savannah. And I think we covered almost everything. Can you think of any, tidbits or what was your favorite place in Savannah to visit? Where would you go back to if you could only go back to one place?
Well, I'd have to be Bonaventure Cemetery. It's such a unique place, nothing like it in the United States as far that I've ever been to. So I think that would be it.
That would be yours. Yeah. I think mine would probably be the church. I think St. John the Baptist, just because it was gorgeous and beautiful. And that neighborhood in general was my favorite neighborhood because, of course, it was also the neighborhood with the bookstore. So so things to do if you are planning a trip to Savannah, absolutely look at their events. Double check. I happened to catch it one weekend where the garden club was doing garden tours. So I was able to go in there with the Garden Club of Savannah and buy a ticket that got to go into, about 6 or 7 different gardens.
Well, these are gardens that wouldn't be open
Oh,
to the
no,
public.
because they were people's houses.
Yeah.
They're literally their backyards. And got to see some of the really, I think they called it the Hidden Gardens tour, in fact. But got to see these gardens where people have just gorgeous, gardens, lots of greenery, and also just how they've built it up to be like another room of their house, because they would have beautiful furniture back there or a room in the back for guests, and
Sounds lovely.
it was really very lovely, and learned a lot about the kind of plants, because of course it was a garden store.
Right.
And then also because they also ended the tour at one of those big historic houses on one of those squares, and we got to go in there and have a little bit of a lemonade and desserts and stuff, so that was kind of lovely. Got to pretend I was a southern lady sitting on the porch, so that was lovely.
Garden Club of Savannah.
Yes.
Okay.
So check, because just check and see what events are going on, because you want to check and see if there's tours like that going on, or any of the historical events that might be happening, festivals, because we happen to catch the farmers market or other festivals be going on. So definitely check the calendar before you go and make some plans around the calendar events.
That's right.
And then there are a lot of things you can do around Savannah.
Yeah, so Savannah, of course, has tons to do, but then if you want to get out, we took some day trips out to Hilton Head and Tybee Island. And Tybee Island was actually part of our photography workshop. We did some beautiful photography out there. One of the photos is of the pier.
Sunrise.
Sunrise, yeah, that's right. Sunrise. One little tip here that I didn't put in here, I should have, but if you do a little bit of research on places to have breakfast, so go out there, photograph a beautiful sunrise, and then there's this little dive that is right off the water, not too far from there, and it's a really cool place to grab a really greasy breakfast.
Good to know. Greasy breakfasts, yeah. So, and I think there's a lighthouse, the smallest lighthouse.
There is a lighthouse out there.
In Georgia, is out in this area. So definitely Tybee was a great place. We were there. It was a little too cold to really enjoy
chilly.
a beach.
Yeah.
But, certain times of the year, it would be a great place to go out there. We actually also went to Hilton Head. Now, Hilton Head, we actually went out there with the rig and stayed for a few days.
Yeah.
So we got to really examine that one probably a little bit more than we did Tybee, which was just a day trip. But that is a place that you're going to come in. It's got, it's a usual beach town with lots of beach town things. But the landscape there was much different than most beaches. Yeah. Lots more trees and flowers, lots of places to eat and drink and just have fun. It was another place where we happened upon a festival, kind of it was a shopping area with a square, but there was a big lawn and people were sitting out chairs, and there was a concert and stuff, so that was really cool. And we just walked around there and got to eat a few places. And then you just showed a picture. One of the things we did was we took a sunset sail on the Stars and Stripes, which once won the America's Cup.
America's Cup, right.
That's right. So that was fun because you got a really different view of Savannah and that area, because you were kind of, out on the water. So that was cool. Shelter Cove was the area we walked around and saw the shops and stuff. This was the captain of Stars and Stripes, and he let me drive. That was really fun.
That was fun. Yeah.
Yes. So you want to definitely plan your trip there again to see what's going on. They also have a lighthouse there. There's one area of Hilton Head called Sea Pines, I think. You have to actually pay an admission to go into that area, so you want to plan so I've paid my admission, I'm going to see this area for sure for the time. But again, that was another place we happened upon some arts and crafts, and just also a marina that was gorgeous. Remember all those beautiful boats that were really quite lovely.
Yeah.
So if you're going in the area, so we already talked about, definitely do some research so you know what's going on. Campgrounds. What campgrounds?
There are some good campground options. We stayed at a really fun one, not too far from Savannah.
Yeah, this is probably the closest one that we could get into.
So it was very convenient, and it was a cool little farm area. Had a beautiful house out in the back that they rent out for weddings. Had some goats and some horses, and so it was a lot of fun.
It was fun watching the goats and horses. Yeah, that one was called Red Gate Campground and Resort. So, like I said, I think that one was only about 15, 20 minutes from
like
the historic district of Savannah. So that was really close. We also stayed out at Lake Jasper RV Resort once. That was more in Hardyville. So that one...
a little bit more of a drive.
That was a little bit more of a drive because it is about 40 minutes, I want to say, from town. But it was good for us at that particular time because we were... investigating Savannah, but we were also looking at Hilton Head and some other areas in the area. So it was a bit more out, but it was right on the lake, and it was a nice. It was really nice campground. Nice. I've also heard Skidaway Island State Park is really close to Savannah, and that's highly rated. I didn't get out there to see it. And then, of course, the one we stayed at in Hilton Head was the Hilton Head Harbor RV Resort in Marina.
Yeah.
That one's interesting. It was like people owned the sites and rented them out kind of like you do condos. It was a little bit tight, but lots of trees and bushes, so it gave some privacy, but they were tight spots. But we had the funniest thing happen. We pulled in, we were there already, and then an RV pulled in behind us and ended up being Mark and Trish from Keep Your Daydream. So totally was like, we think we know them. How funny. So, so we would recommend making reservations for food. Read Midnight of the Garden of Good and Evil. Is that how you say it? Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil before you go, just for fun. Walk the squares and shop as you're going along. Check out the farmers market on Saturday and look and see when St. John's is having an organ event.
And make it out to Bonaventure Cemetery.
And I think you would have a fabulous time in Savannah.
That's a chock full fun few days in Savannah. So, well, thank you so much for being part of this. We really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing this. Please share this with your friends and family, and let us know.
Because they all need to go to Savannah.
That's right. Let us know in the comments if we missed something that you think. We'll certainly be back in that area at some point. We do.
Definitely, if you stayed at any of the campgrounds, let us know in the comments about campgrounds or things that we missed.
That's right. Thanks for being here. Until we see you in person, we hope to see you in the virtual campground.
See you around the campfire.